Welcome to Joy Unfiltered. I'm Rachel, and this is a podcast about joy. Not the shiny, performative kind, not the everything happens for a reason kind. This is joy as a strategy, a way to stay steady when life feels loud, a way to stay human when things are hard, a way to lead, love, and live without burning out or checking out. Some episodes will be just me. Some will be honest conversations with people who have lived their way into a deeper, truer joy. No fixing, no bypassing, just real stories, real tools, and room to breathe. Let's get into it. Well, welcome to or welcome back to Joy Unfiltered. I am Rachel, your host, and I have a delightful guest with me today. So I am just going to get right into it and introduce him. I have Savio P. Clemente. I've been told there's a different Savio out there, but I have Savio P. Clemente with me today. And Savio is a keynote and TEDx speaker. A little bit jealous. We'll talk about that in a second. Journalist, board certified wellness coach, best-selling author, and healthcare leadership strategist. He works with leadership teams after disruption when crisis is over, but performance has not fully recovered. After 2,000 plus interviews with global leaders and his own experience rebuilding after surviving cancer, not once, but twice, Savio developed the Adaptive Resilience Leadership Framework, which I can't wait to ask him about. His work helps leaders cut through the cognitive overload, make clearer decisions, and avoid the quiet performance drop that often follows high pressure moments. He focuses on the intersection of healthcare, leadership, and human performance, helping organizations operate with clarity and consistency when it matters most. So welcome, Savio. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you, Rachel. That was a mouthful. I appreciate you giving such a great intro. Thank you.
Yes, well, it is. And you've got so many things that we can talk about today. But first, and we talked about this just a bit before I hit record, but where are we finding you today?
Sure, you're finding me in New York. I'm about 40 miles north of New York City. I'm in a county called Westchester County. It's suburbia at its best.
Lovely. And is that where you grew up, or where are your historical roots?
Sure. So I actually was born in Mumbai, India. I came to the States when I was 3 years old, but my parents are from Goa, India. And what people don't know is that Goa was ruled by the Portuguese for about 400 years. So the inhabitants have Portuguese sounding, Spanish sounding first and last name. So when people physically look at me, they can never place me correctly. I grew up Catholic, and so that confused people as well. And so it was a town from where I am about only 15 minutes away. And if you ever watch the show, and I'm dating myself here, Rachel, the show The Facts of Life, it was they talked about a little town called Peekskill, and I grew up in that real town called Peekskill. It was a great, quaint, quiet town, and I have to say it was very diverse, which was great.
Yeah. Okay. So you can date yourself all you want because yes, you're speaking my language and you're speaking many of the people that are listening to. I don't think I've thought of the facts of life for a really long time, but amazing. So that's great. That's great. And what an interesting. I love talking to people who one have global perspectives, have diverse perspectives. So what an interesting perspective that you bring than having parents not born in the US and then coming here and living in a small little town and in
I
the
did,
facts
and
of life.
honestly, all I wanted to do as a little boy, I'm a child of three children my parents had. I'm the youngest of three. I have two older sisters, so I was always very, very sensitive in general. But I just wanted to assimilate. Just I wanted to be just I wanted to be one of the people, and so it was only until obviously you get older that you realize identity is very important, especially in an age and in the environment that we're all living in, where some of it's silenced. So it's
Yeah.
very important for me to represent that aspect.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. So let's get into a little bit, and I just want to jump right into joy and leadership. So, but we need a little bit of background on how you got into the work that you are currently doing. So we'd love just a little bit of the geographical insight into you. Like how where other are some other insights or some other background stuff that we can know.
Sure. So I would say the work that I'm doing, which I consider a mission as well, is really an advent of something really dire, which is a cancer diagnosis. I was diagnosed in 2014. I came back from a trip with a friend we went on a three excursions to London, Paris, and Amsterdam. And I noticed I was having drenching night sweats. And I'm like, wait, I'm in Europe. I shouldn't be. This is not the tropics. And so I came back, and at that time in my life, I actually, not that I didn't believe in medicine, I just was someone who didn't take medicine in general. I didn't even take aspirin, honestly. And I was seeing a naturopath at the time, and he basically analyzed my blood and my diet structure. So he would give me, cues on what to do and what not to do. And he's like, "Oh, my friend, something is wrong here." He's like, "You definitely need to go into mainstream medicine and get a sonogram." I'm like, "Why sonogram, doctor?" And he wouldn't say. And so I did. And fast forward, a parent of mine picked me up, even though I drove there. They made me wait in the waiting room for like an hour and a half. Went to the hospital. I got admitted that same night, and I overheard some nurses talking about transferring me to the seventh floor, and I heard the seventh floor was the cancer floor. So I had a feeling uh, that it was cancer. I couldn't verify it until the next day. They told me it was stage 3 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a blood cancer. At
Mhm.
that moment in time, my stomach was getting distended, and so I had ascites, and inside the ascites was a lymphoma. I was bedridden for about a week, and I was in the hospital for an additional 7 days. And 2 days before I left, the medical director came to me and she's like, "Listen, we know about your health history. We know you're quote unquote healthy. But if you do not get your first round of something called R-CHOP chemotherapy, I don't know what your outcome will be." I'm like, "Doc, really?" She's like, "Yeah." And so, Rachel, I had to wrestle with the fact that I didn't really have a choice because I was strapped to, I had a nephrostomy tube for a week, so I was in the hospital. It's sometimes you're told you have cancer, you go see the doctor tells you, okay, this is the situation, you have time to, I didn't have any of that. And so I relied on a friend who I thought, not who was, in fact, one of the wisest people that I've known. And she's like, "Are you sure you want to put all those poisons into your system?" And I really had to question myself because this is someone I looked up to. And I'm telling you right now, I don't know if it was the stress of it all and the weight of it all, but I had a dream and I remember seeing the movie. I'm dating myself here again, called Little Buddha, starring Keanu Reeves, and he played Siddhartha, the little Buddha. He gave up all his worldly possessions and he was meditating with two other ascetics. They were living, I think, on 1 grain of rice. And he overheard them as he's meditating, two individuals on a fishing boat. And one of them says, "If you hold the string too loose, it won't play. If you hold it too tight, it will snap. The path is the middle way." And I was like, "Oh, okay, I can say yes to the docs. I can say yes to life-saving chemotherapy medication, and I could do a whole bunch of integrated modality. I have the autonomy to do that. I have the right to do that, and I live in a country where I can do that." And so that's what I did. And just to make a long story short, I had an additional 5 other rounds of that R-CHOP chemotherapy over the course of about 4.5 months. And then about 5 days before Christmas of 2014, I was told I was in remission, and I was in remission for a decade until, unfortunately, I had a relapse in June of 2024.
Oh my goodness. Well, first off, so glad, well, that, and we'll talk a little bit more about the relapse, but so glad that you survived. And thank you for being transparent. I think one of the things that we all have are gifts to share. And so I appreciate you being willing to share some of those gifts. You know, it is interesting also that people do not cross your paths for unintended reasons. And although I don't always know the reasons, it's interesting that we were having this conversation right now because I was just wrestling this last week only because I'm watching a documentary, but about the differences between Eastern and Western medicine, and how that also is the whole thing where we can hold two truths at the same time, right? We don't have to be this or that. It feels like in the United States right now, we are so polarized in, I'm not getting political, but we're this or that, right? So whatever it is. And so, and in medicine too, it's either you do this or you do that, but your whole story allows us to talk about that it's both and, right? The process, this journey is a both and journey, and there's no, yes, this is right or this is wrong. It's let's use the best wisdom from all of the things that this earth, that the people on this earth have to offer, right? And so, how did you sink into that? How did you come to that realization? Like, what was that process for you to say? I mean, you talked a little bit about your friend and not having choices, but you had choices and you chose to accept both.
Well, first of all, thank you for highlighting that. I think it's important for us to realize, just like improv actors do, and yes, or yes, and
Yes, and
it never sort of, ends the conversation. You just kind of continue with it. But I think for me, and I would have to say part of it is personality type as well. I'm someone who's just fiercely independent in terms of thought. I've challenged my parents and stretched them more than anyone probably could, just because of some of the choices I've made. And I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm just saying that I made choices that, for me, felt right at the time. It might not have worked out, and it might have been painful, but it's choices, and they had to accept it. Uh, the other thing I think also is the fact that even I wasn't that young when I had cancer, but the first time, but I just knew. So I grew up Catholic, and in college, back in the mid 90s, I always knew I wanted to explore other belief systems. So up until that point till now, I've studied everything from Buddhism to Jewish mysticism, all the way to Vedic philosophy. And so at the time, I just knew that this is happening to me. I can't pretend it's not. And I said to myself, what is the best way forward here? What can I control? I can't control my platelets, my blood count, my red cell. I can't control any of it. I can't control the ascites in me. I can't control lymphoma. I can control the way I feel about myself. I can control my mental state. I also can do two things. I can do one, I can allow the doctors to reflect back to me their care, and I can reflect back to them that we're in this together. That's number one. Number two, I did something a little radical. I don't know where this came from, but it came from somewhere deep within. I reframed the chemotherapy not as poison. I reframed it as an elixir, as they call it, manna from the universe in the Bible, something that's given to me. Yes, it was engineered scientifically and medically for its purpose, and it's engineered to do certain things, but I need to accept and submit to it. And really, the accepting and submitting to it, I was put into another test, like I said, 10 years later with the relapse. But I would say it came from my personality type, my yearnings and search for quote unquote the truth, because I believe all religions have that kernel. We just have to find the thread that ties and binds them. And I
yeah,
would say the third thing is also my zest for wanting to live. I wasn't really fearing death, Rachel. I was actually fearing that I didn't finish what I came here to do. None of us have an assignment written down, but I just knew that I didn't want to let myself down or let other people down. It wasn't a burden. It was more of like, wow, okay, I guess it's over with, that sort of thing. I didn't feel like I was ready for that. And I know a lot of people do, so I'm not taking this lightly. And because everyone has woulda, coulda, shouldas, but I just felt that, damn, I don't think I did.
yeah. No, yeah. And the couple of things that I heard you say that I wrote down. One, there's a co-creation piece of this, and there's a reframing. So this co-creation and this reframing, so we can talk about it, and you did, beautifully in the story that you told about your experience. But how do we, or how do the listeners then use that? There are some people probably going through cancer, right? But there are other people just going through life, right? We're going through life, and whether that be something at work or something at home or whatever that might be, how do we use those two things or those two lessons that you learned about, it's all about co-creation, and it also can be about reframing. How do we use that to our advantage, or how do we use that in our lives?
So I think it's important now to maybe spell out a little more of what happened. So I was in remission
Sure. Yeah,
for
yeah.
a decade, June of 2024, come back from another trip. No, it's not the trips, but I came from another trip. And I saw my oncologist. I didn't have to see him after 5 years. They say you don't have to see. They're like, we love you, Savio, but you don't really have to see us. And I'm like, can I just come once a year? Like, yeah, sure. So I did my blood work. Everything was good. And he's like, I'll see you next year. I'm like, okay. And I'm like, oh, just to let you know, doc, I've just noticed some nasal stuffiness and some intermittent ear fullness. And he's like, okay. I'm like, I'm going to my ENT. He's like, yeah, just tell him to send the records. We'll put in your file. See you next year. I'm like, okay. I went and my ENT was like, whoa, there's a lot of inflammation there. He goes, do you know B cells can live in the nasal cavity? I'm like, what? I thought I was going to go in there for nasal medication. And he's like, I've been burned as a doctor before. So he's like, let's be on the safe side. Let's do an MRI. Did an MRI, came back. He's like, yeah, it looks a little weird. It's like, let's do a biopsy. And literally Friday at 3 p.m., a couple days later after the biopsy, I get a my chart notification, and I believe in getting notified. So I'm not someone who's like just disappointed in it. And it said it was a relapse. And the next day was supposed to be my 25th college reunion. I was emailing individuals weeks ahead of time. I couldn't see anyone because honestly, I didn't have the courage or the stamina or the interest to pretend everything was okay when it wasn't. And I know myself well enough to know I can't really fake it. I would never be a really great actor because I just I can't fake it like that, especially when it comes to real world issues and
Sure.
problems.
Sure, sure.
And so I tell you that story because I think it's really important. So basically, with a relapse, they call it refractory. It's a very involved situation. So it's 2, 3 day stays in the hospital to get chemotherapy. Then they have to put a neck catheter in you to harvest your own stem cells, or you can get donor cells. I got my own stem cells. You're tied to a machine for sometimes 1 to 3 days. Of course, you rest. It's like 6 hours a day. Fortunately, I only had to do it for one day. You have to inject yourself to stimulate the stem cells. You have to go into the hospital. They give you back your stem cells. Typically, it's 3 weeks. I was there for 4 weeks, 29 days, because every time I would stand up, my heart, my pulse would go to 160, 170. They had to rush me to ICU one night to get norepinephrine. Fortunately, I recovered from that. Obviously, I had side effects. It was a quarantine room. And then when I left the hospital, they did scans and I received a CR, which is complete response to treatment. I don't call it remission anymore because I used it for a decade and I just don't like using the word.
Yeah, fair.
And so I did that for about 4.5 months. And then I did about 5 months of physical therapy. Once you get your stem cells, basically because your bone marrow is depleted, they actually tell you and give you a second birth date. And I thought it was a woo-woo thing that they're like, no, this is a real medical term. Technically, you're a new person physically. And I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, they're like, you have two birth dates. We count the days after your stem cell. So I can say that I have a birthday in the winter and I now have a birthday in the summer. And I wanted to make just 2 points because telling you that story. One, I did the same thing. I just submitted and surrendered to the medicines. When the docs would come in to do their rounds, 13, 14 deep, I made sure I garnered as much energy as I could to meet them there because they're not just healing me. I'm actually mirroring to them what a patient and the possibility could be. So I made sure that the energy exchange was at least
Mm-hmm.
visible. And I even said to them at one point, I'm like, I surveyed the nurses who came to do, check my vitals. And I said, all of them say that patients are rushing to go home and then they have to come back. 'Cause they have an infection or something else. And I'm like, I'm not one of those patients. I would love to go home, but I am no rush to go home. I don't want to come back here. So you discharge me whenever you feel that it is proper to do so. And so I think what people can take from this are a few things. One, I created what they call psychological distancing. My training as a board certified wellness coach, my leanings of understand of the human condition, I knew I had to implement these things in real life, in real time. And so psychological distancing is not about disassociation or disconnection. It's about creating a buffer, a distance between you and the problem. So, in other words, instead of just saying, woe is me, why is this happening to me? I can't believe I'm here. I want to do this. I want to do that. I can't do that. I actually said, okay, Savio, right now, the physical Savio is tied to these machines. Yes, I'm in a quarantine room, so I did anchor on two things, silence and stillness. And every belief system will tell you about that, that those are both accessible and free and can be used anywhere, anytime. And I'm telling you truthfully, and I know this to be fact, that within that silence and stillness, it was a reservoir of things that I myself didn't even know I could unearth. The fact that I was able to then rely on other things that I could control, like my mental state, my mental acuity. I didn't work, by the way. I wanted to make sure that I focused like a laser beam on just the healing. So I didn't have any distractions. I didn't want any distractions. People would text me. If I had the energy, I would text them back, but that's basically it. And so beyond that, I actually discovered something, and people talk about this idea of metacognition. I've heard the word, but it was only in real time did I discover that. And metacognition is really the thinking of the thinking. So, who is actually suffering here? Which part of self, which part of identity, which part of consciousness is actually doing the thinking within the thinking? Now, Buddhist, yoga meditators, people in deep prayer, people in flow state touch upon these things. I ended up having a huge medical malady that forced me to actually recognize these things. And really, the third thing, if you're asking what people can do, is I
Yeah.
reframed once again this idea of resilience. It wasn't me just about bouncing back because I knew I was in the hospital for a while. I knew recovery would be a while. So instead of resilience, I actually said it's adaptive resilience. Is that in the SHIT, how can I remain flexible? How can you remain flexible and create strategies? So this could be someone left you, this could be someone fired you. This doesn't have to be as dramatic as my situation, but you can still use these truths to help you.
Yeah. Okay, so much there. So two things I want you to reframe again, not reframe again, but talk about again. So you talked about psychological, I wrote it down, psychological
Distancing.
you distancing. Sorry, I can't even read my own writing because I was like listening to you to what. So psychological distancing and how we can use that. And then just redefine metacognition for
Sure.
us.
So the real definition is the thinking about the thinking.
Thinking
And
about the thinking. Okay.
sometimes people get too much in the weeds of this. So I like to touch upon it lightly because if you get too much and you get too heady about it, then you lose the whole point of it. But basically is who's actually controlling the thinking? Who's actually thinking the thinking that you're thinking? It sounds
Very
very, very,
heady. It's very heady, right?
and it sounds very, very sort of convoluted. So the fact is, though, it did afford me energy. What else did I have to do? Think about it. One of my sisters asked me, she's like, "Can I ask you a question?" In 29 days, like, what did you do? And you know my great answer for her, because she's just of a different ilk than me. I said, I just slept. She's like, what? I'm like, yeah, I just slept all day. I gave my permission. I gave permission for myself. And being a person who constantly wants to do things, I gave myself permission to just sleep all day long. And that's what I did. And so, but in that sleep wasn't really sleep, right? It was deep thought, I've been a long time meditator, so I was meditating. I wasn't really praying, but I was in deep sort of flow state with that as well. And I really believe, and I've learned this through this experience, that recovery and progress doesn't always have to be optimizing. We don't always have to optimize. I was like a huge optimizer, tracking this, metrics that, and no, sometimes it's the least effort that actually creates the most progress.
Oh my gosh, I love that you just said that because I think, and that whole word optimization right now is such a buzzword, right? Like we're
Yeah.
all trying to do all of these things. And yet I love that you said, whew, just need to take a breath. And no, it's not about that. I mean, we're even trying to optimize our sleep and our meditation and our morning routines and all this stuff like this, all of this. But what I'm hearing from you is really what we need to do is breathe, let go, surrender, co-create, and just be. And sometimes those answers and that healing just comes from just being.
Yeah. And this is from high stakes. I mean, you can't get any more high stakes than me.
Right.
So
This
I'm
isn't this
telling
isn't just like I can't answer an email or
yeah,
I'm like
exactly.
stressed out
Or
about my
like
laundry.
or like someone, left me. I mean, I'm not trying to minimize that pain. Pain is
Agreed,
pain.
agreed,
Not
agreed.
minimizing the pain. But high stakes is in the moment when it was technically life or death, I made these choices. And I said to myself, and the reason why I made the choices is because I'm like, what else do I have to lose? Like, I have to test these things and see because what else can I hold on to? And so I would also say, really, the second thing as well, which I love that you brought it up, is this idea that the relaxation is not just about like relaxing on a beach. It's like relaxing into yourself and the situation, allowing all parts of you to be okay with what's going on, not having that mental overload and mental frustration and mental like stress about the whole
Yeah.
thing. Just allowing yourself to just okay, accept what's going on and not be so rigid in trying to always figure out that you have to have the answer. Maybe the answer is for you to sink into the moment and be present. Maybe that's the answer for you. Or maybe for me, after the after about 6 times going to the restroom in one day, thinking to myself, you know what? Maybe this is just the way it is right now. I had to come to that realization after like every 2 hours having to go to the restroom. I mean, it wasn't pleasant because I had to call people to come unplug me and do this and do that. So maybe that's the answer sometimes.
So one thing that and you mentioned this, and I had written it down before too, about meditation. So let's talk a little bit about meditation. So people are listening and they maybe are raising their hands in their cars as they're driving home in rush hour traffic, and they're saying, okay, I do want to sink into myself, or I do want to be more present. I do want to do that. And I know this feels like a doing answer to a non-doing thing, but so I know it's a little weird, but let's talk just about the practice of meditation. So, so many times people say, I can't, I can't quiet my mind. I can't do meditation. My response is, well, we practice meditation, but do you have tips? Do you have ways in which people can get into the practice of meditation?
Yeah. First of all, I think people have to understand what is meditation and what is
Great place
meditation
to
to you.
start. Great place to start. What do
If
we
you
even mean when we say
It,
that?
yeah, if you want to incorporate meditation, right, there's definitely many myriad of ways that you could do it. There's the traditional ways, lotus position, spine upright, there's humming, there's mantras, there's chanting, wonderful, wonderful things. Honestly, none of it worked for me. I've been doing it for over 20 years. The simplest way for me that always has worked and still works is instrumental music, no words, lying down after I wake up. I after I wake up from morning, I'm not tired, so I'm not going to fall asleep. I started off with literally 30 seconds, and then I went to a minute, and now I'm at 20 minutes. 20 minutes is perfect for me. If I don't get it, Rachel, I've actually tested it. I actually feel off. I do, and it's not psychosomatic. Like this is not like me pretending. No, I actually have noticed there's a difference. And so there's also these other thoughts. People go into meditation. I want to get insights. So wonderful. If that's what you want to do, you're trying, but okay. Someone like, no, it's just about clearing the mind and having nothingness. Okay, whatever. Really what meditation is, and it's not my description of it, but it's sweating effort. That's actually what true meditation is because it's about being not only present and authentic with yourself in the moment, but knowing where the you, resides. That's it. So if you can get to that place of stillness and silence, because that's really what meditation really is. Silence, I mean silence within. Obviously, the music, the instrumental music is going. The reason why I can't have no music it's because I live in New York, okay? I mean, I don't live in New York City, but I live in New York, and there's noises, and I'm very attuned to those things. And so that's really basically what it is. But if you want an easy way, I'm going to tell you something that I spoke on the TEDx stage. My TEDx I did about 2 years before my relapse. It's called 7 Minutes to Wellness: How to Love Your Inner Stranger. And people are like, inner stranger? What? They're like, what is the inner stranger to you? I'm like, well, I left it nebulous on purpose, but I said, if you want to really know, the inner stranger for me was that young person who never felt grounded. I never felt completely like I belonged. Yes, I was friends with different people. Thankfully, I was never bullied or anything like that. But even a friend used to call me nomad. It wasn't the nicest word to use, but that's what he would say. And so that's mine. She's like, oh, I get it. She goes, for me, the inner stranger is that idealized professional woman that I just can't reach, or that mother that I want to emulate, but I just can't be that great mother or that great sibling. And she's like, oh, that's what it is for me. And so from the TEDx talk, I created a mini framework. It's called the Aloha Reboot. As we all know, in Hawaiian, aloha means hello. So it's a hello to your inner self. So A means acknowledge, acknowledge where you are. Like I mentioned, don't pretend. Do a word vomit, story vomit, type it, write it, cry on it. I don't care. Just be truthful in that. L stands for listening. So listen to your inner voice. Now, in Hawaiian healing, there's a modality called Huna healing. And in Huna healing, they actually believe you can talk to your body. That the body not only sends you sensations, but it actually has voice, it has consciousness, it has language. Maybe not verbally speaking, but it has that. So you have to be quiet and still and try to figure that out. Now, I don't expect you to do this in front of other people. They might think you're strange, but I call it the three brains, head, heart, and gut. But you can talk to the other organs of your body. That's the L. O stands for opening. So open yourself up to this. No matter what your belief system is, you're just exploring yourself. There's nothing that you're doing that's considered strange. H stands for harnessing. So harness this information, make the mental connections, make the emotional connections, see what works, what doesn't work. I'm sure some may or may not work.
Mhm.
And A is act. Act, but it's a caveat. Act with courage. You need the courage in order to act because change, and this is what all the research points to, is change is not something we all want that at some level, but it's not that people don't want change, it's that people don't know how to change. They don't know if they're thinking about change in pre-contemplation, making the change, are in action of the change, wanted to relapse and go back. And so it's called the Aloha Reboot. Very easy, 7 minutes a day. And if you don't have 7 minutes a day, break it down to 1 minute a day. Take one of the acronyms and practice that for the day.
I Well, so many things I love about that. The first thing is just going to be the last thing that you just said is that, right? Because so many people are, there's some fear, there's some trepidation, there's some like, I can't do that. Yes, you can. And break it down even smaller, like 7 minutes. If that's too long, do a minute, do 1 minute, do 30 seconds. You even said that yourself, right? Start small. The consistent habit is what, or the consistency, right, is what creates that change. But I really, really, Savio, appreciate that the last A in the Aloha is the act. And you said act courageously, but act, because I think that so many times we get stuck in this, we're meditating, we're being present, we're manifesting, we're doing all these things, we're asking for all these things, and we're sitting with it. But I do believe, and this goes back to your co-creation piece, that that is part of it. But part of our responsibility then is to do something. This doesn't just happen if we sit on the couch. This didn't just happen if you would have just received all of that information in the doctor's office and just sat with the information. Yes. Did you need the information? 1000%. Do we need the download from the universe or from yourself or from wherever? We need that. But I love the fact that you said, and act. Like,
I mean, what I mean, remember the whole secret thing? The main ingredient that was missing from that was people didn't act. They thought all they could do is just wish. And I'm not discounting that because I believe truth, just like I be with healing, is highs and lows. You got to find it, okay? And I will die on that sword. It's not linear. Healing is not linear, and the truth, no matter what the truth is for you, whether that's manifesting something or discovering something, you need to do the work, and the work requires action. But on top of that, as well, you should give your body and yourself permission to recover and rest if something is ailing you. Because I think sometimes we push so much, and with my lane, which is healthcare leadership lane, and that's why burnout happens because the pushing is the fact that the pressure hasn't really gone. It's just gone internal. And that's where performance is either won or lost. So when I deal and I speak with healthcare leaders, whether on stages or coaching, or even in my interview series, I'm running one with CEOs and CMOs. I mean, they deal with high stakes. High stakes for them is life or death for not only for them and their organization, but for their
But
patient.
they're clients,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't take the work lightly at all, but I understand where it comes from because that's where clarity is lost. That's where the pressure mounts so high that composure is lost. That's when they don't regain. Did you know that in the US, I just ran a series and I was talking to a CMO. The United States has $935 billion in medical waste. Why do you think that is? Do you think that's all just based upon? No, that's human beings behind all that. They're talking about AI optimizing everything. The fact is, you can't optimize a human person and their performance and what they feel, believe, see, and know, and all the heaviness that comes with that. So we need to do a better job.
Well, we need to do so both and, right? It goes back to that both
Of
and. We
course.
need to do a better job of both. A couple of things that came out from what you just said: breathing, resting, listening to whatever, but also listening to our bodies. I mean, there's two things in your story that you said. One, in your own physical story, listening to your body when your body's talking to us all the time, right? Our bodies are like always saying, yes, this is awesome, or no, this isn't. Total aside, I have to laugh. And I don't even know who does this commercial, but they're like, when your food fights back. I'm like,
Oh, yes.
just
I don't
don't eat
know.
the food then. Like, don't
Yeah.
eat the food. Like, let's not get to the spot where we had to like calm down the food.
Yeah.
Don't eat the food. Your body's
Yeah.
saying, don't eat the food.
Yep.
I laugh every time I see that commercial. Anyway, total aside. But listening to our bodies and then acting on the information.
Exactly.
So we need that. But the other piece then that you got into about this whole leadership piece, one of the things that I talk about and we talk about in the podcast is, leading from joy,
Hmm.
and whatever your definition of that is. But for me, joy is simply the fact that we're noticing things that bring our nervous system into this centered space so that we are able to make good decisions,
Yep.
right? And we can't do that if we don't, one, pause, get all the information, and then do something with it, right?
Yep.
But we do need to act from this state of, we don't need to, I should rephrase that, and not even should, I would prefer us to act from a state of regulation so that our creative juices can flow rather from the state of, oh my goodness, I am so stressed that my purview is about like yay small, right?
Absolutely. And
So
what's
how
on?
do you talk to um, especially leaders in the healthcare industry? How do we get to the place where we can start to use regulation, we can start to use collaboration, and we can start to use joy to make decisions rather than this stress and frenzy?
Well, in the healthcare leadership space, right, they use all those technical terms like strategic reversals and increasing ramp and accelerate post-crisis momentum. What is joy? Joy is the opposite of stress, right? What is the opposite of stress? What is it? No crisis. And people assume that you have to just get through the crisis. And that's the thing that I speak on stages is no. And they think, oh, that they won the day. No, that's when you lose because to recalibrate from that, it takes time. And mine is not just from a journalist and coach perspective, from a keynote person's perspective. It's from lived experience perspective. I know I've seen the healthcare system up front twice now. A title I didn't want, a two-time cancer survivor, but I got. And so I feel like when it comes to that area, because they take care of us. When COVID hit, I mean, I have to give them credit. Um, One of my favorite shows right now is The Pit on HBO Max, starring Noah
Okay, I
Weil.
can't watch it because I like it's so real and it's so I blood is not my thing and the human whatever, but I've heard the psychological piece of it and the real humanness of it is so amazing.
I will tell you truthfully, my nervous system is a wreck watching this show. I will scream at it. I will, yeah, but it's so wonderful to watch because it's not only entertaining and riveting, but it actually gives you a glimpse from my brain, from what I studied and 2,000 plus interviews with leaders and change makers in different disciplines. It really shows you the fact that those who are taking care of us are sometimes not okay. And so we have to come to a semblance of, yes, they have the knowledge and the training, but they themselves aren't regulated. They themselves are not doing any practices. I don't care if you call it wellness, woo-woo, it doesn't matter. Just do stuff that allows you to function and perform better. And a lot of this is really about armor and what you portray. Because what's a leader, Rachel? A leader is just someone that you want to emulate, embody, mirror off of, someone you want to follow, correct? And so a large portion of time, they're so fixated on the role and the responsibility and what people perceive them as that they themselves lose themselves in the process because they themselves, and I'm not discounting the fact that they have responsibility and the fact that they have to not only take care of the organization and their team, but also their family, right? Because it's a job at the end of
It's
the
real.
day.
It's real.
Absolutely. But this actually is a classic example. I tell this story because I think it's really important to tell. Right before my relapse, my editor gave me an assignment. It's not, I cover leadership, I cover wellness, I cover healthcare. He's like, do you want to cover the red carpet at the Oscars? I'm like, what? He's like, yeah. And so I was like, okay. And I had a friend in LA. This is before the fires. So, took me to Malibu and to, Venice. So I got to see that because I haven't seen it. And I went to it. And Rachel, I will tell you, interestingly enough, I'm there along with other major publications. They're coming to me because it's like I'm right next to a huge publication. And I realized something. They're still acting. I don't know what I was thinking, but they're still acting because they want to save good face for me as a journalist, for their handlers, for their managers, for the photographers. They're still playing, they're still acting, they're playing a role. And it's once again my brain, the coach brain, the journalist brain, the keynote speaker brain, and I'm like, oh, and so I tell this because I think it's very important for people to understand that when it comes to healthcare, wellness, whatever you call it, you want to make sure that you are not only complementary with what they are telling you that the right protocols are, but that it feels right within your body, that they themselves are showing you humanity in that sense. And if it's not, it's your right to say no. And that's okay because not everything, I had amazing care. Did you know my oncologist, Dr. Steinberg? I woke up one morning on a weekend, it was a Saturday, and there's, big clocks in your hospital room. It was a quarantine room because of a stem cell transplant. They want to stave any infections. And I'm like, Dr. Steinberg? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, it's like 5:30 in the morning. He's like, yeah, Mr. Clemente, I can't do rounds today, so I just wanted to make sure I come in. And I'm like, what doctor does that? And then he came the next day for the weekend because he couldn't do it either. Come on, And so I really appreciated just the fact that he gave me his humanity beyond his expertise. Yeah, it was very
I
touching.
mean, and in healthcare and I think that translates to anything, right? And so what you're saying is that if we as leaders are able to bring our authentic selves, to bring our whole selves, I talk about this whole, we don't want to leave our half of ourselves at the door. We want to bring our whole, that doesn't mean it doesn't mean you have to talk about the fight you had with your spouse the night before, but we bring our whole selves to work. If you can do that, then that is then, as you said, a leader that someone wants to follow, right? Not about
Absolutely.
the, yes, the knowledge and that, but not about the bravado, about the real humanness. And that sometimes for me is what I feel is, I don't want to say missing, but missing, that there are so many leaders right now that humanness is missing. And it's interesting. I talk about this whole joy-led leadership. And so, the four things that we talk about, that energy over endurance, integration, being your whole self, over compartmentalization, talk about collaboration over competition, and regulation over urgency. And someone said, well, that's kind of fluffy or that's a little feminine. And I'm like, no, that is just being real person, right? That's just like real person. So that is what your surgeon, your oncologist, your doctor was doing, was just being a human being.
Yeah. And he wasn't just feeding me information. In a world of disruption, social, political, technological with AI, where you can get content, he was showing me what humanity and care is, right? And that's
Yes.
beautiful. And this, you alluded to it before, is my adaptive resilient framework. Basically, is just at the end of the day, noticing the signals and the patterns and converting that into that clarity. And how can you get clarity? If you know yourself, there's a reason why there's a saying that says to know thyself is to heal thyself. And to heal another, you have to know yourself really well enough to know what your strengths, what your weaknesses are, what someone can sort of give, take from you. Uh, and I think when it comes to anything in life, mine happened to be medical once again. It could be adversity in any form. I think those are the seeds because I always go back to Eastern philosophy with this. Nature does not force itself. The seed is not forced. It just knows. A river, there might be a boulder or rock in front of it. It goes under, it goes over, it goes around, but it knows its direction. And I know that's easy to say, but very, very hard to actually emulate or to embody or to feel into. But it really is the truth because as someone, I went on I did a wellness experience. I was covering it in Italy. It's on the border of Italy and Austria. And it was basically forest bathing. And she was older in age, very wise. She knew literally everything, not in a book, just from her own knowledge. And she said something so profound. She goes, nature doesn't need us. We need nature. It will always exist. We are the ones who wither away. Beautiful. Just
I
beautiful.
mean, absolutely beautiful. And I think we're listening to this in 2026, but in 2020, 2021, as a world, we could see that,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Once we stopped, nature healed itself in a matter of months, right? I mean, nature healed itself. So yes, that is so beautiful. So love everything that you are doing and that you're saying. So as people are listening and they're thinking, I love your energy, Savio. I love what you're saying. Tell us a little bit more about how you work with people, how people can get a hold of you. Like
Sure.
people, I'm sure, are thinking, I want more of Savio in my life. How do I get that?
I love that. Thank you so much. They can go to my website, very easy, saviopclemente.com, SAVIOPCLEMENTE. On there, they can see my keynote work. They can see my TEDx talk. Every Wednesday, I put out a Substack newsletter called The Human Resolve. And I talk about head, heart, and gut intelligence, and also interviews. Right now, I'm running an interview series with CEOs and CMOs on the healthcare leadership operating system because they themselves need to reboot as well. And then, lastly, if they want to find me on any social media site, I'm at the Human Resolve because, once again, what else do we have but resolution and resolve in such a challenging time as we live in?
I couldn't have said it better. So I do ask everybody at the end, what is bringing you joy today, Savio?
What's bringing me joy is the fact, the simplicity of seeing my parents were overseas. They finally came. There was some airspace disruption, and they're actually planting the garden. And to actually see other things blooming right now is actually bringing me a lot of joy. I know it's so simple to say. I could have said that I just won an interview. I that happened this week, but I that's not really what's bringing me joy. What's bringing me joy is knowing once again that our time here is limited. And so the only way forward is through the pain. That's the only way forward.
I appreciate that. One of the things we talk about often on this podcast is that joy is those micro moments. Joy is those simple things. Joy is not some you can find joy in big moments, but really joy is experienced in small moments.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. I think that we all have gifts to offer. And I appreciate the fact, Savia, that you have realized your gifts and that you are willing to share them with the world, that you're willing to share them with us today. So thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing your gifts with other people as well. Again, those of you listening, pull over please first before you look at the show notes, but look at the show notes, then get a hold of Savio, see other pieces, see other wisdom that he has to offer. So again, thank you. Appreciate you from it. And really from the depths of my heart, I appreciate everyone listening, and I'm celebrating you today and every day. So have fun, live well, enjoy.